Welcome to the Creator's Journey with the Halfling and the Spaceman. We love talking to creators about their journeys. And today we are super excited to have with us J M Beal. She is the author of the series The Tales of the Watcher Cat, and she's also the author of the Guardian Circle series. Welcome, JM.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to finally get to meet you. The Space Band got to meet you at RavenCon, but I didn't go, so I didn't have that opportunity. So it's nice to finally meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
I won't say in person because it's not exactly in person, but I'm sure that we will meet at some point.
By the mystical powers of the internet.
Right. Uh, well, okay, so Jim, we're going to go ahead and get started. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how it was you came to choose writing as your creative outlet.
It's always hard to start talking about yourself, isn't it? So I started writing um, much longer ago than I would like to admit to. I was the kind of kid that disappeared into a book anytime I was given the option to do that, because sometimes I just didn't necessarily enjoy the real world or having to deal with that. Um,
Mhm.
so I read. That was my universe when I was little. And then I was in college to be a cultural anthropologist, and
Oh.
decided nobody was ever going to pay me to do that, and I needed to maybe make another choice. So I was maybe going to go archaeology, but it also felt like that required a doctorate before anybody was necessarily going to pay you to do it, and I didn't want to stay in school that long. Um, and I stopped going to school for a while because I felt like I was just racking up debt and there wasn't really a direction involved with that. And I
Mm.
was working at a Walgreens in Manhattan, Kansas, and I started writing my first book on receipt paper between
Oh, wow.
customers when I was just standing there with nothing to do. It was a way to occupy myself through an 8-hour shift. That book will never see the light of day. Like, other people have read it, and I did actually finish it. I wrote an entire novel. It took me about 4 years to write the first one. Um, but it's not good. It doesn't need to be out in the world at all. But it was definitely a learning experience. And yeah, books and writing, I mean, writing in all forms is how I make the world make sense to me. Um, but particularly writing novels is my playtime. I've definitely written a lot more than I've published.
Mhm. Well, so writing was something that you wanted to do early on? I mean, even though you were looking at other, careers with the, cultural anthropology and archaeology, writing was there in your mind the whole time, or did you just say, let me try this?
I mean, I was definitely always writing. I wasn't writing for publication. Like, even
Hmm.
as like a teenager, like fanfic, even before we called it fanfic, was the way that
Hmm.
I entertained myself. When you were in class, you weren't necessarily allowed to. This was pre-cell phone days. I couldn't like hide my phone under the desk and watch
Right.
TikTok. Like, I had to do something with my notebook that would entertain me, and I wrote fan fiction stories or my own stories. Or but it didn't occur to me that that was a thing that you could do, like, as a job when I was a teenager. And now, as an adult, it occurs to me that that's not necessarily a thing you can do if you want to feed yourself. Some people get lucky, but there are a lot of us who are making our way in publishing. Um, it may never pay the bills, but it makes life feel worth living sometimes.
There you go.
JM, you mentioned fan fiction. That means you were a fan of something. A lot of our creators we talked to got their start because of their fandoms. So, what was your earliest fan love?
Oh, wow. Okay, the first thing that I was unhealthily attached to, or healthily attached to, depending on who you ask, was definitely Jurassic Park. Um, I'm going to date myself here. I was 13 when the first movie came out, or I had just turned 13 when the first movie came out. And I drug every friend who could stomach me long enough to go to see it multiple times. I read the book until the covers fell off. I had the sheets. I had the behind the scenes making of book. I had the like candy that they came out with in 1993 that probably shaved a year off your life every time you ate it. But yeah, I did everything Jurassic Park, and I still like I. We could have a conversation about the movies that people think aren't good, and I don't care. Just give me my dinosaurs.
Everybody loves dinosaurs.
Uh, well,
Uh,
did that sort of prompt your interest in archaeology? Were you hoping to find some dinosaur fossils?
Well, archaeology is people and dinosaurs are or yeah, archaeology is people, dinosaurs are paleontology. Um
Oh, shoot, you're
yeah.
right. Sorry, my bad,
No,
my
you're
bad,
now,
fine. I definitely
my
wanted to be a
bad.
paleontologist when I was like 13, but college chemistry pointed out that science was not my strong suit in that context, and I
Uh,
moved on to other things.
yeah, I should have known with paleontology because I was such a huge Friends, fan, and Ross was paleontologist, and they talked about that all the time. So I don't know what I was thinking.
hey, archaeology is cool too. You get to dig up old
Yes,
bones, look at old writing,
well,
look at pot
absolutely,
shards. I mean, not as cool as
Yeah.
dinosaur feet, but it's still pretty cool.
I'm not dissing archaeology or paleontology. I think they're both cool. Anytime you're literally digging into the past to discover how people lived or how animals lived, and died in a lot of cases. I mean, it's I think both of them are really cool. Uh,
Yeah.
but anyway, we'll get back on track. so, with so you were such a huge Jurassic Park fan. Um, did did your parents were they okay with that? Your friends? I mean, you said you dragged them to the movies like just all the time. So were they sort of tolerant and understanding of that?
My mom was definitely understanding of it. She thought, I mean, she was 100% behind buying me all
Uh-huh.
of the weird, kitschy Jurassic Park stuff, a lot of which I still have. My best friend was a huge Michael Jackson fan, and I had stomached that since we were about 6 and listened to a lot of Michael Jackson that I didn't necessarily wanna listen to, so and an insane amount of New Kids on the Block that I didn't necessarily wanna listen to because those were her
Mhm.
almost fetishes.
Mhm.
So she was very understanding of my unending
Mhm.
desire to watch the same Jurassic Park movie over and over again or play the terrible 1994 Nintendo game.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
Well, the way you're describing it, it's almost like a marriage because the spaceman and I've been married almost 38 years now, and we always kid each other that it's mutual putting up with. You know, that's what keeps it going. It's mutual putting up with.
Yeah, sometimes you got to put up with your friends.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I have a current crop of friends, several of whom are really into K-pop right now. And that is not my bag, but more power to them, and they really enjoy it.
Well, that transitions perfectly. We're going to talk about your fandom a little bit. So, JM, how does your fandom drive your writing?
Wow. Okay. Um, I mean, definitely the Guardian Circle series was that started as fanfic. Like it didn't stay there, but it definitely started there. Um, the first book I ever published started as a like side idea that I had while I was working on a fanfic piece for a thing that it's not even really a fandom that I'm super in. But I found the characters really interesting. So it kind of drove me to try new things. I will say the biggest thing that I get out of writing fanfic as a writer is that that's the place where I can go play and there's no pressure. Like there's no this has to be good enough to show to other people because the intent of that is for it to never like I have a deal with our my business partner Kate that when one of us dies the other one's going to go erase her computer because the world just never needs to know what all was on there. So yeah, fanfic is a really good place to if you have a really wild idea and you feel like when you're writing for publication or when you're a quote unquote serious writer, like that's not a term that I love, but there are things that you kind of don't let yourself do because you think the market won't bear it.
Mhm.
But fanfic is a really good place to go do that really wild. I'm going to write an entire book in second person transitive tense or some ridiculousness like that. Um, as a way to just see what, can I do that thing? Is it readable if I do that thing? Um, and still have fun with it in a way that I think sometimes we forget how to do when our creative outlet is also a thing that's monetized to whatever extent it's monetized.
That echoes something that we've heard from other writers, and which is you have to sort of examine your motivation for writing. Are you writing, just for yourself, and just because you've got this really cool idea in your head and you just want to get it out? Or are you trying to write the next great novel and get it published and get it on some of those, like New York bestseller list type things? So that's, and it's interesting because I'm hearing that while you are professionally published now, you also are you still writing your fanfic? Is that something you still do?
I mean, when I get time to write, I definitely still write
Mm.
fanfic. Um,
Mhm.
I talked about this a little bit at um, MarsCon or whichever RavenCon. The last one I was at, I always forget which one I'm at when. I talked about I
One of those cons,
yeah,
yeah.
they all kind of bleed together after a while.
Yeah.
I went back to college just before COVID and got an accounting degree, and so now I have a day job as an auditor. Um, and that means particularly this time of year, I don't have a lot of time to sit down at the
Mhm.
computer and do the things that I might want to do. But
Yeah.
yeah, even as a, quote unquote professional writer, as a writer and a publisher, I still definitely write fanfic. I definitely write a lot of fanfic when given the option to. It doesn't get published anywhere. That's kind of a professional safety thing for me. Like that doesn't the world doesn't need to know what makes it into the published books and what doesn't. And yeah, so it all lives on my hard drive and it doesn't go anywhere. And the only person who reads it is me.
Well, having been exposed to some fanfic that I would have rather not been exposed to,
Uh,
I understand. But, don't
yeah.
discount your fanfic compared to like New York Times bestsellers because that's not necessarily always a high bar.
Nah.
Yeah, yeah, I've definitely read fanfic pieces that were significantly better than published works by like big six publishers. Are we still saying big six or are they five now because of Penguin Random? Um,
All I know is one is the loneliest number, but that's beside the point.
yeah.
Uh, well, Are you able to tell us what you might be working on now?
I mean, as a writer, I definitely always have a number of projects going at the same time. Um, they're generally in various states. Um,
Mhm.
the Guardian Circle series is finished. Theoretically, every time I say that, there's a character in the back of my head that goes, "Is it really? Are you really done? Some of us don't have a story yet." Um, the Thomas and Rabbit books, the Tales of the Watch Cat series is not done. There are, I forget, 3 or 4 books out right now. There
Mhm.
are supposed to be 6 in the series. So at any given point in time, I'm to a certain amount working on those. Um, and then for years and years and years, I did National Novel Writing Month. We'll kind of skate by how people are generally not happy with National Novel Writing Month right now, for a number of different reasons. But it's a thing that I got out of the habit of doing, but I definitely did it for a long time, and because of that, I have, you know, 15 different partially finished projects, um, that I kind of consistently think someday I'm gonna go back and finish. Um,
Mhm.
but probably the thing that's most eminently supposed to be happening is the next Thomas the Watch Cat book is supposed to
Mhm.
happen, sometime in the next year. And then I have a fantasy series, that's a little more high fantasy. I don't know that I would necessarily call it high fantasy, but it's a little more than that. And it doesn't even have a title yet. But it has the first 2 books in hopefully a 5-book series. We're going to hope it stops at
Oh,
5. I don't know.
oh.
Sometimes you start plotting and you hit book 7 and you're like, all right, I don't know what I'm doing. We need to go back and rethink this.
It's funny you mentioned the fact that you've got characters that still need to do things. We were recently at LibertyCon and we sat down with an author friend of ours, Shammy Stovall, and I essentially begged her for another book. So, even if the characters will tell you they got another story, people will tell you you've got another story, and it depends on the voice you listen to.
Yeah, we definitely have. The first book that I technically published, was called Undiscovered Country. And we just got the rights back for that. And theoretically, it's going to come back out soon. It needed a little bit of a re edit once I got the rights back because the editing process is fun often. Um,
Oh,
but
yeah.
that one,
I'm
there
sure.
there have been a number of people who tell me that there needs to be a sequel to that. I don't know if there ever will be because I think I talked about this a little bit at RavenCon. There's a point where you're not the same person who wrote that book. Like I wrote that book in like
Mm.
2010 and so much, like not even what's happened in the wider world since 2010, which is a lot. But a lot
Yeah.
has happened in my life since 2010 and I'm just not the person who wrote
Mhm.
that book anymore. And I don't think that I could pick it up and write a sequel without there being really noticeable riffs, because I just don't tell a story the way I did then. I don't interact with the world the way I did then. So, yeah, I would like to maybe go back and finish what I originally thought was going to happen with the rest of that universe, but I don't know that it will ever
Mm.
happen.
Well, it sounds like you've got, plenty of things that you can get to, you know? You just need to pick one and go with it, right?
Yeah.
Well, we're getting all these perfect segues today, Halfling. That brings us to our next topic, the writing process.
Mm.
JM, everybody has their own creative process, and everybody's process is a little different. Could you walk us through your creative process, how you go from conception of a story through the implementation details of writing it down and composing it? And then, since you're also involved in the publishing side, how you take that manuscript to a finished book.
Yeah, I can definitely do that. For a series, I tend to try to I'm a super heavy plotter. I know some people aren't, but I am. I've been doing this some level of professionally, sometimes full time, sometimes not, since about 2003 at this point. So I know myself, and I know if I don't have a full plot, including where we're ending at, we'll never get out of the middle. I will write a book that has a really great beginning and then has 150,000 words of middle that just aren't going anywhere. Um, so I'm a really detailed plotter. For a series, like a multi-book series, I tend to plot the whole arc for the series all at one time so that you can kind of go back and be like, okay, wait, when I had this idea that applies to book three, but I needed to like forecast that in book one. I needed to say something in book one that made it clear we were going to wind up there. Um, Not abundantly clear because I need you to not know we're going to get there until we get there, but you have to go back and kind of sprinkle those things in. So I tend to plot the entire series all at once before I actually start writing. Um, and sometimes that plot is really bare bones and doesn't tell me a lot other than sort of the big picture things that are going to happen. And sometimes it's really detailed to the point of like dialogue that I think needs to happen at certain places. Um, and then I will start writing. For the Guardian Circle series, I tried to draft the first, like zero draft. I zero draft everything. Some people put together a really polished draft on their first go, and that's their like first draft. Zero draft is a hot mess. A zero draft is literally everything that flows through my brain while I am writing, including sometimes we get brackets that have like, I forgot what this person's hair color was written in them, and then I just keep going. Because if you slow down, you'll bog down and you won't actually finish. So for the Guardian Circle series, I tried to draft all three books in a month and a half, I think is how long I gave myself to do the first draft of all three books. And I made it through all of book one, all of book two, and then the first like five chapters of book three. Um, and then it took me like a year to finish book three from that point because that was, 150,000 words in like a month, which is kind of an obscene amount to write.
Yeah.
Um, and
Wow.
I didn't end up cutting a lot of what I had written in that run. I ended up adding because the other problem with drafting really, really quickly is that sometimes you like get done with your draft and you look at it and you're like, right, but like we needed to spend some more time on specific plot points, or we needed to add things, or we needed to do other stuff um, to make the story feel more fleshed out and more complete. So yeah, I drafted all three of those really fast, except book three took me like a year to finish after that sprint. Um, and then I put it down for a couple of months. Um, that was a thing that we really stressed early on when I was sort of still learning this process. When NaNoWriMo was a lot of how we all, on these message boards for Nano and things, we all talked about like what are we gonna do? How long do you let it sit before you go back and edit? I generally find I need to leave myself at least a month between when I wrote everything and when I go back to edit for my brain to not just see what I intended to be there. Um, if I do it too swiftly, I remember what I thought I was writing and it doesn't clang at me if it's not right. Or I don't necessarily catch the spelling mistakes because I remember what word is supposed to be there. And that's the one that I see. So I generally leave a month between when I drafted and when I go back and edit. Um, right now, because of day jobs and family stuff and all the other stuff, sometimes that turns into like 6 or 8 months. But that's even better because at that point, I have no recollection of what I read 6 months or what I wrote 6 months later, which is good as long as you finished your thought. The problem is sometimes you have a sentence that you didn't quite finish or a chapter that you didn't quite finish, and you're like, "Yeah, I don't remember where we were going anymore at all." Um, so yeah, the drafting process happens really fast. The editing process is always slower. Because I zero draft, it usually takes me 2 or 3 runs through the revision process before it's clean enough that I'm willing to show it to anybody else. And then I have a group of, other writers that I work with often enough, um, that I'm comfortable handing them my stuff to read and see. Yeah, the trick to finding an editor in any context, whether that's a beta reader or an actual editor, is that you have to find somebody who will be gentle enough with you not to crush you like a bug, but also honest enough with you to tell you that there are issues, right? Like, you kind of need both of those things. If people are too hard on you, then it's, discouraging and it hurts and it doesn't actually accomplish anything. But if people are too easy on you and
Yeah,
they're like, "Oh my god, everything is absolutely amazing. This is perfect." And you're like, "Well, it's definitely not perfect. So, like, let's
right.
work on it." Um, yeah, so we do the editing process, and then, um a friend and I, Kate, started a publishing company called Golden Fleece Press. At this point, most of what I publish just goes to Golden Fleece Press, because if I didn't trust us as a publisher, I don't know how I would convince anybody else to give us their work if I wasn't willing to use us as a publisher. So that turns into, I don't necessarily like send out proofs and send out query letters and all of that stuff anymore. I definitely did that once. I have done that several times,
Mhm.
in different contexts to different levels of publisher. Even back in the days when people sent their stuff to an agent before you started trying to send it to a publisher. I did some of that as well.
Uh,
And then the publishing process for a sort of indie. Technically, we're a small press, although sometimes we call ourselves a bijou press, because there are there are only so many of us doing anything at any given point in time, which makes timing difficult for things. So, as myself going to press with Golden Fleece Press, there are a few steps that we skip because the editors that we would use are the people that I've already had read my books, so we don't necessarily go through that round of edits again because we've already done it. Um, but we have a layout process. Once you're through all of those editing steps and everybody's happy with the book, the last thing it does is go to a copy editor who is a completely fresh set of eyes that's never looked at it at all.
mhm.
Because invariably, no matter how good you think you've been at editing, that last person will catch 5 or 6 things that the rest of us just didn't catch, right? Like, it just didn't click
Oh,
to
sure.
us. It didn't pop out on the page at us. So that last fresh set of eyes is always important. And then, even then, the universality of publishing is that you will find that last spelling mistake after you have gone to print. Like, it's just not avoidable. Um, so yeah, we do a proof process where somebody gets a physical proof and we kind of flip that through once, because similarly you will find that last spelling mistake or that last layout mistake on the physical page in a
Mhm.
way that just would not ever appear to you in on a PDF or in digital media. um, and then there's all of the behind the scenes publishing stuff of picking a cover and setting up the website and managing press if that's a thing that somebody's doing, and all of that before you're finally ready to change the picture to say that the book is available for purchase and get it out the door.
Mhm.
And on the short end, I feel like on the average that takes about a year and a half per project. um, at least. Some projects take significantly longer. Um, as a publishing house, we do a lot of children's books that are very visually heavy, and those invariably take like an extra 6 months, um, because all of our publishing options lean into the way the colors look on a computer screen may not be the way the colors look in actual physical media the first time that you look at them, and
Mhm.
that adds extra time because you got to go back and tweak files and
Yeah.
change things. But yeah, as a process, it takes a long time to get from beginning to end, and that
Mm.
assumes that you write fast and that everybody is on the same page right from the get go, which doesn't always happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess especially if you're, publishing your own stuff that because in addition to writing and editing and maybe getting somebody else to look at it and edit as well, then you have to go through that whole publishing process, and like you were describing. So that in and of itself is like a whole other job. So
It it is definitely a thing. It is definitely a thing that
yeah,
I am probably better at than the average author, because I don't just do it for myself.
right.
For the Golden Fleece Press has been going for, I think we're at 10 years, 10 or 11 years at this
Hmm.
point. Um, and
Oh
over
wow,
that time, the
cool.
person that we've had who was able to do layout and do book cover design and do all of the back end publishing stuff was me. So I yeah, but we definitely have authors that we've met at other cons and things that have been like, "Oh my god, I hate doing it so much." And I was like, "Yeah, it's terrible. I sympathize. I also hate doing it.
Yeah,
I weirdly hate
yeah.
doing it less when I'm doing it for other people than I do when I'm doing it for myself."
Yeah, 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 I guess that makes a difference. So, well, we're about to the point where we're running out of time, but I wanted to get this in. Tell people out there where they can find out more about you and about your writing and your books and your your press that you started way back.
Absolutely. So the fastest way to find everything is goldenfleecepress.com. Um, it's spelled exactly like it sounds, Golden Fleece Press. And then my website is jmbeal.com. I am abysmally terrible at updating my own website. Usually, I will remember to do it right before con season when it's time for me to write down all of the places that I'm going. Um, I have an Instagram. I'm in a dead name Twitter because I refuse to call it X. I have a Twitter, but I'm not on it anymore. Similarly, I technically have a TikTok, but we went through a very long period there where as a I'm not technically a government employee, but I'm kind of a government employee, and therefore I wasn't allowed to have a TikTok. So like I'm
Huh.
sitting on my account name, but I don't actually do anything with TikTok. Um, so yeah, jmbeal.com, goldenfleecepress.com. Um, Once in a blue moon, you will see pictures of my cat on Instagram. That's pretty much it.
We
Well,
need to share more pictures of our cat on Instagram.
yeah,
I
we
think
can
that
do
would
that.
be great for the halfling and the spaceman
Yeah.
and our mascot, the cat,
Yeah,
Yeah.
our cat Pepper has been laying here, the whole time.
on the floor in
she
front of
she
us.
has to she has to listen in and
She supervises.
you know she hears a different voice, and so she's got to check things out. um, well, JM, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. It's been a real pleasure getting to talk to you about your journey and finally getting to meet you, even if not in person. Looking forward to doing that at some point. We'll have another con season coming up next year.
Con
So,
season!
Yeah.
but thank you again for joining us today and taking that time.
Thank you for having me.
We want to thank our audience for joining us today, and we hope that you've been entertained and inspired by today's guest, J M Beal. And we also want to thank you for joining us. And this is the Spaceman for the Halfling and the Spaceman podcast. Over and out.